My name is Jenna Vance. I am 32 years old, and until that afternoon, I thought I knew exactly how much humiliation I could swallow for the sake of family. Then, I walked into the back room of the family estate in Savannah, holding my daughter Zoe's final birthday blueprints in one hand and a lighter for her candles in the other, and I froze. Her $5,000 architectural pearl sugar model was crushed upside down, directly in an industrial trash bin. The delicate, hand-sculpted pieces were broken completely in half. Behind me, the entire room went dead silent. In that strange, heavy way, people get quiet when they know something cruel just happened, but they are waiting to see who will be brave enough to say it out loud. My brother Trevor leaned against the marble counter with an unrepentant, mocking grin that did not even pretend to be sorry. When I asked him what happened, he laughed carelessly and said, "Honestly, she wasn't worth wasting the space on." My daughter stood right beside me in her blue birthday dress, still wearing her gold paper crown, staring at the trash like she was trying to understand how her hard work could disappear before anyone even sang for her. I did not scream. I did not throw a plate. I simply picked her up, felt her tiny arms locked tightly around my neck, and walked out while the entire family watched in silence. The drive back from the estate was entirely silent. Anger wasn't loud or explosive this time. It was clinical. I didn't cry, and I didn't ask myself what I had done to deserve their cruelty. I simply looked in the rearview mirror at Zoe, who was quietly holding her broken paper crown in both hands, looking out the window like she was trying to be older than she was. Halfway home, she whispered, "Did Uncle Trevor throw it away because I did something bad?" I had to pull the car over to the side of the road. I turned around and told her as clearly as I could, "No, baby, you did nothing wrong." Sometimes grown-ups behave badly because they have ugly things inside them, and they try to hand those ugly things to other people. Her lip trembled then, and she finally cried. I climbed into the back seat and held her tightly while cars rushed past us on the highway. And I promised her we would build another model, a better one, something nobody would ever touch unless she said so. But the whole time, a cold, quiet thought formed deep inside me. I had protected Trevor from consequences for years, and in return, he had treated my child's joy like trash. When we stepped inside my independent apartment, the rooms felt heavy with the weight of old habits I was about to break. I guided Zoe to the couch, gently slid her noise-cancelling headphones over her ears, and turned on a movie. I kissed her forehead and promised her that she was safe, that she had done nothing wrong, and that Mommy just had some boring, grown-up business to settle. She nodded, her small eyes completely trusting, entirely unaware that the compliant woman she knew as her mother had just permanently transformed into someone dangerous to her abusers. I walked into my home office, closed the door, and flipped open my corporate laptop. The screen cast a sharp, cool blue light across my face. I did not dial Trevor's number, and I did not waste my breath sending a warning text to my mother. Engaging with them emotionally was a premium luxury they had overdrafted for years, and their family account was officially closed. For over a decade, I had been the uncompensated silent investor in their fraudulent version of family, footing the bill for their emotional bankruptcies, while my daughter and I collected the scraps. That subscription ended tonight. I sat back in my chair and pulled a heavy, locked steel ledger from the bottom drawer of my desk. I didn't need to look up my bank statements online. I'd printed every single one of them over the years, keeping a permanent paper trail of my own blindness. My compassion hadn't been a virtue. It was a liquid asset they had overdrafted for over a decade. 4 years ago, Trevor had approached me after his first major investment venture collapsed into a heap of bad debts and angry clients. He didn't ask for help. He came with my mother, who wept on my couch until my living room smelled like burnt toast and quiet desperation. I traced $30,000 straight out of my business expansion fund to erase his financial negligence under the false banner of blood loyalty. He called it a temporary bridge loan. My accounting records called it what it truly was, an uncompensated bailout that would never see a single day of return. Many people look at stories like mine and ask an uncomfortable question. Why did you wait so long to leave? Why did you let them bleed you dry before you finally stood up? They don't understand that when you are raised in a toxic ecosystem, your survival mechanism becomes a psychological trap. It is what therapists call learned helplessness, an invisible chain that binds a survivor to their abusers. From the time I was 12, Trevor was taught that his mistakes were just phases, while I was taught that my excellence was an obligation. You become so conditioned to being the family doormat that you genuinely believe that if you just hold the door open a little wider, if you just absorb a little more of the damage, they might finally see your worth and love you back. But they never do. They just demand a higher credit limit on your soul. I didn't stop at Trevor's debts. I single-handedly financed the structural maintenance of the Vance family estate in Savannah when my mother claimed she couldn't afford the property taxes. I paid the bills, repaired the roofs, and smoothed the tablecloth over the deep fractures in our foundation, all while they took my architecture contracts and showcased them to their high society circles as proof of their own legacy. The contrast was sickening. While I chose to live prudently in a modest apartment, quietly reinvesting my profits into my firm and Zoe's future, rather than flaunting wealth, Trevor was driving a luxury sedan and presenting himself as a wealthy investment consultant. He used my uncompensated professional labor to construct a flawless upper-class illusion, a fake identity tailored specifically to trap Abigail and her real estate family. My family wasn't shocked by the cruelty of what Trevor did to my daughter's birthday. They were shocked that I had torn up the old script and finally stopped paying the bill for his existence. This wasn't a sudden emotional breakdown on my part. This was an audit. The silence didn't last. At exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone lit up with a text message from Trevor. He didn't ask how Zoe was. He didn't address the $5,000 model he had systematically crushed into an industrial trash bin. Instead, his message was a textbook exercise in gaslighting. Look, I'm sorry if you got emotional about the project space. Wedding stress is absolutely killing me right now. Let's just move on. Also, Mom said the venue might call you in the morning to verify some paperwork. Do not make this weird. Just fix the account before business hours. I stared at the glowing text, my face perfectly calm. This was the trap of cruel normalization, a psychological phenomenon I had watched manifest in our household for decades. In a narcissistic family system, the abuser's toxicity is always downplayed as stress, an accident, or a minor misunderstanding, while the victim's attempts to establish basic safety are treated as an act of absolute war. Over the years, my mother had frozen the family's moral standards to keep Trevor comfortable. If he stole, he was under financial pressure. If he destroyed, he was just being a rough boy. The ecosystem was designed to protect the golden child from the consequences of his actions, and it relied on me to continuously absorb the impact so the machine could keep running. Minutes later, the text message was followed by a phone call from my mother, Stephanie. Her voice was thin, frantic, and dripping with weaponized panic. She didn't ask about her granddaughter. She launched straight into the script of the enabler. Jenna, please, you have to listen to me, she sobbed into the receiver. The venue's automated portal just flagged Trevor's account, and they are threatening to freeze the entire ballroom reservation because your company name was removed. You need to call Vanessa right now and put your guarantee back on that contract. If this wedding falls apart, everyone in Savannah is going to blame you. There it was, the ultimate inversion of reality. Trevor commits fraud. Trevor ruins a child's birthday. Trevor fails to pay his balances, but I am the one responsible for the fallout. No, Mom, I said, my voice dangerously level. Trevor made his choices at the exhibition lunch. Now I am making mine. I hung up before she could unleash the next wave of emotional blackmail, but the family machine was already shifting its gears to rewrite history. By dawn, the smear campaign had officially moved to the public square. My mother posted a lengthy, carefully crafted status on Facebook, complete with quotes about blood loyalty and maternal heartbreak. Some children get a little success and immediately forget who raised them, she wrote, positioning herself as the weeping victim of a cold, ungrateful daughter who valued personal pride over family bonds. My cousins and aunts immediately started flooding the comments with prayers and condemnation aimed squarely at me. They weren't shocked by Trevor's cruelty. They were terrified that their reliable cash cow had finally left the pasture. At exactly 9 o'clock the next morning, the structural battle shifted from emotional gaslighting to corporate warfare. My email notification chimed with a high-priority alert from Vanessa, the Chief Operations Director at the Waterfront Conservatory. The subject line read, "Final notice regarding Vance Hart wedding reservation." Underneath it, in bold clinical text, were 3 words that made my jaw tighten. Guarantor signature required. I opened the attached documents twice, not because I was panicked, but because my brain needed to categorize the exact legal boundaries of my brother's desperation. Trevor hadn't merely mismanaged his wedding budget. According to the venue's official records, my corporate identity, Vance Eco Design, had been officially listed as the sole coordinating party and absolute financial guarantor for his account. He had accessed the sample contracts and digital portfolio templates I sent him months ago as a professional courtesy, using my old office number, my corporate tax assignment codes, and my business email to fraudulently disguise his personal wedding as an official corporate gala to bypass their strict credit checks. But the true kill shot was a scanned copy of the liability form at the back of the file. It bore a signature that from a distance looked exactly like mine. It wasn't. The line weight was too heavy, the curvature in the first letter was too rigid, and the last name was rushed, written with the clumsy arrogance of a thief who assumed I would clean up the mess before anyone noticed. He had breached my digital business files to forge my executive authorization, creating a perfect illusion of corporate backing to bypass their initial scrutiny and secure a lifestyle he couldn't afford, transforming my business reputation into an unauthorized insurance policy for his $450,000 wedding fantasy. The outstanding ballroom balance was precisely $150,000, due in full by 5 o'clock that evening, or the space would be permanently released to the public. My brother had built his entire marital timeline on the absolute psychological certainty that I would remain too crippled by generational guilt to expose his fraud. He believed my company was the rope he could climb out with. He was wrong. I didn't dial his number to negotiate, and I didn't scream. My anger wasn't loud, it was transactional. I immediately compiled an official corporate affidavit alongside digital copies of my verified signature from 3 past state-certified contracts. I explicitly stated that Vance Eco Design had never authorized, financed, coordinated, or accepted a single cent of liability for Trevor Vance's wedding file. I attached the forensic evidence of the signature mismatch and routed it directly to Vanessa's secure terminal. It took exactly 12 minutes. Vanessa's response arrived shortly after affidavit received. Your firm has been completely stripped from the liability ledger. The couple has until 5 o'clock to clear the outstanding balance. Inside my office, my laptop glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of numbers, facts, and quiet, systematic retribution. The email notification from Vanessa wasn't the end of the legal audit. My corporate attorney sat across from me in my home office, his hands methodically sorting through the historical financial records of my firm and my personal inheritance accounts. We weren't just looking to clear my company name from the wedding venue contract anymore. We were hunting for any other liabilities Trevor might have secretly anchored to my life. The room was filled with the warm coastal sunshine of Savannah, but the atmosphere inside remained ice cold. That was when my attorney stopped clicking through the digital folders. He pulled up a scanned document from 2 years ago, a property transfer deed for a piece of land on the outskirts of the city, and my breath caught in my throat. It was the exact same signature mismatch. The rigid lines, the stiff loop in the first letter, the rushed, aggressive stroke at the end, it was the identical forgery Trevor had used on the contract at the Waterfront Conservatory. 2 years ago, my father had passed away, leaving a specific piece of family land to be liquidated. In his final will, that asset was strictly designated to become a lifelong education fund for my daughter Zoe. It was $85,000 meant to guarantee her future, her schooling, her safety, if anything ever happened to me. I had left the execution of that estate in the hands of my mother Stephanie, trusting her to deposit the funds into Zoe's trust account while I focused on my business. I looked at the actual transaction history, and the reality was devastating. The money had never touched Zoe's account. The $85,000 had been entirely rerouted into a private investment clearing account controlled exclusively by Trevor. My mother and my brother had systematically colluded, forging my signature on a falsified trust amendment that appointed Trevor as a co-trustee, allowing them to siphon every single cent of my daughter's inheritance. Trevor had used the capital to bankroll his disastrous, failed stock market speculations, while my mother covered his tracks with an elaborate matrix of silence and lies. Every time I had asked about the land account over the past 24 months, my mother would pat my hand and tell me to focus on my own problems, gaslighting me into believing the legal processing was simply delayed by the county. This time, my fury didn't spark. It turned to ice. This discovery didn't trigger tears or a sudden panic. It completely wiped away any remaining shred of familial sentimentality. This wasn't a messy domestic dispute about a ruined birthday project anymore. It was a verified criminal file of inheritance, fraud, and corporate theft. The people who shared my last name hadn't just treated my child like an inconvenience. They had criminally looted her future to fund an abuser's luxury illusions. Every single text message my brother had sent, every weeping call my mother had made about keeping the family together, was nothing more than a strategic distraction designed to prevent me from looking at the numbers. They had overdrafted my compassion until there was absolutely nothing left to extract. Trevor wasn't just an irresponsible, immature man who needed a safety net. He was a corporate criminal who belonged in a cell. And my mother was his primary accomplice. My attorney quietly asked me what our next move should be, his pen hovering over his legal pad. I closed the file with a steady hand, a cold smile settling on my face. Draft a formal criminal notification, I told him, my voice completely factual. We are forwarding these forensic records directly to the local authorities and the venue. No more negotiations. This removes any remaining path to redemption for them. At exactly 4:15 in the afternoon, following a coordinated plan with Vanessa to let Trevor walk straight into his own legal trap before his prospective in-laws, the final reckoning materialized inside the pristine marble lobby of the waterfront conservatory just 45 minutes before the hard deadline. The space smelled of expensive white roses, a stage set for a wedding Trevor could never afford. My brother stood near the primary reception desk in a navy suit he had explicitly chosen to look responsible. Beside them stood Abigail and her prominent family, their faces rigid with growing suspicion. Vanessa, the chief operations director, waited behind the desk with our forensic legal file laid open, completely unbending. The second Trevor saw me walk in, his carefully constructed upper-class performance cracked. He rushed forward, trying to lower his voice to a hiss. Finally, he snapped, his eyes flashing with desperate venom. Tell them this is all a massive misunderstanding. Call Vanessa right now, put your company name back on the guarantor line, and fix this before 5 o'clock. You're ruining my life over a petty dispute. My mother stood up from a velvet bench, clutching a tissue. Jenna, please, she sobbed, using her weaponized enabler matrix. I know he was wrong about the birthday project, but family helps family. Don't let one mistake destroy your brother's entire future. Put your name back on the account. I looked at her, and then I looked at Trevor. The old script dictated that I soften, rescue them, and absorb the damage to keep the peace. But I stood completely still, an absolute calm anchoring my posture. No, I said, my voice cutting through the high ceilings of the lobby with perfect clarity. I opened my digital portfolio tablet and turned the screen outward, projecting it directly toward Abigail and her father. On the high-definition monitor, I displayed Trevor's raw midnight text messages. The certified signature overlay report, drafted by my attorney, providing irrefutable proof that he had forged a $150,000 corporate liability contract, and the verified bank records showing he and my mother had systematically embezzled $85,000 from my daughter's education fund. Abigail's father stepped forward, his breath catching as he scanned the clinical proof of white-collar fraud. Trevor looked around wildly, his narcissistic safety net completely vaporized. He didn't morph into a repentant man. Instead, his entitlement triggered a final spectacular public self-destruction. Oh my God, are we really doing this? He exploded, his voice echoing off the marble floors. It was a stupid sugar model. You are weaponizing paperwork because you're a bitter, lonely divorcee. You act like Zoe is the only kid in the world. She needs to learn she is not special anyway. The lobby went deathly quiet. Abigail didn't scream or cry. She slowly removed her sapphire engagement ring, held it in her palm, and dropped it straight onto the marble desk. That tells me everything I need to know, she whispered, turning her back on him completely. This was the precise execution of karmic justice. My brother hadn't been brought down by an act of vengeance. His own unmitigated arrogance and criminality had pulled the trigger on his reality. Vanessa calmly closed the master file, looked at the clock as it struck 5 o'clock, and stated, "The funding window is closed. The contract is officially cancelled, and the ballroom is released. I stood there, watching the golden child completely ruin himself in front of his high society audience, feeling only the profound relief of a heavy door finally closing. By that evening, the grand Vance family illusion had collapsed completely. The $450,000 wedding at the conservatory was officially postponed and then permanently cancelled, leaving Trevor drowning in non-refundable vendor deposits. Abigail's family requested a private conversation with ours, which was merely polite language for taking their daughter home and stripping my brother of every high society connection he had manufactured. In the months that followed, faced with undeniable forensic proof of inheritance fraud and the looming threat of criminal prosecution, my mother was legally forced to liquidate the family estate in Savannah to pay full restitution for the $85,000 they had siphoned from Zoe's education fund. They moved into a cramped rental on the outskirts of town. Trevor sent one final message from a burner number, screaming that I had cost him everything. I deleted it, finally understanding that he would rather lose everything than own his choices. I hadn't cost him anything. I had simply stopped paying his emotional bills. Healing for my daughter came in small, quiet moments. We held a true celebration inside our apartment. The replacement cake was small but flawless, vanilla layers, strawberry filling, purple butterflies, and Zoe's name across the top. Before we lit the candles, Zoe touched my arm and asked if we could take a picture first, just in case. That question broke my heart, revealing the psychological bruise Trevor had left behind. But I knelt beside her and promised her that nobody would ever throw her joy away again. After blowing out the candles, she looked at me and said, "Mom, next year, can we have cupcakes instead, so everyone gets their own, and only nice people can come?" It was the clearest boundary anyone in my family had ever spoken. I've come to realize that walking away from toxic bloodlines isn't cruelty. It is an act of absolute sovereignty and survival. Forgiveness without change is just another chore handed to a wounded person. Motherhood changes the shape of courage. I tolerated disrespect when aimed at me. But when Trevor aimed it at Zoe, he introduced me to a version of myself he was never equipped to face. Some family bonds are not broken by boundaries. They are exposed by them. If you found yourself standing in that marble lobby, looking at an entire family system that expected you to fund your own daughter's disrespect, would you have signed that paperwork to save their fake image, or would you have let the truth drop the hammer? Have you ever had a family member deliberately destroy something your child loved just to feed their own sick ego? Let me know your stance and where you are listening from in the comments section below. Share this video with a self-made woman who needs to hear that boundaries aren't selfish, they are survival. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep building something beautiful together.